Oops, sorry.
Ooh, caught that one all the way over here. All right.
I
And I'll go
just
ahead and get the.
I just finished a big plate of lasagna. So
Yeah.
Recording in progress.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the December edition of the Tips and Tricks SIG. Our format is, as usual, open forum, and then followed up by going through some of the topics that I'd sent out for us to cover tonight. That being said, who'd like to open up the floor with the first question of the evening?
I've got a piece of news.
Okay, we'll take a piece of news instead of question.
Unless you are like me, where I've been going through lots and lots of YouTube videos, you may not know about this. But Google, who owns YouTube, they have been clamping down on the use of ad blockers. And I do use an ad blocker, but when I'm doing the YouTube, I have a setting set so that they can put their ads through, but at the same time, the rest of the stuff like trackers and stuff like that won't go be accepted. Well, as of today, they're playing good old tricks again. Google, being a large enterprise, they have tons and tons of IP addresses and servers galore. And what they did is they added to the identification of ad machine locations plain Google. And periodically, they will take and change which server it is. So the address changes. So an ad blocker like I have mine set would suddenly say, hey, you can't watch this anymore because you got an ad blocker. Turn it off, get rid of it, whatever the case may be, but you're not going to see any more. And if I adjust to it, it starts the video over again. And unless you know exactly where you were in the video when it was playing to get approximately the same location, you're kind of screwed. So they've added this feature of randomizing at least one of their ad machine addresses, and it's going to nail you on any YouTube videos. They're coming in like crazy. I mean, about every 10, 15 minutes, you are getting a series of ads. Not one, but 2 or 3 ads at a time. So it's
well,
getting bad.
there's a few different ways of solving that problem. One of them, the simplest way, is to use the DuckDuckGo browser. It has its own YouTube video feature where it has a built-in video player,
Mm-hmm.
and you tell YouTube or you tell it that you want to play YouTube videos through the internal player, and it filters out all the advertising. And it doesn't matter what the friggin' IP addresses are, and there's no plugins, there's no extensions, there's nothing for YouTube to complain about saying, oh, we detected you're using an ad blocker, because you're not using an ad blocker.
Well,
Um,
that might work, but it may not work. I haven't tested it yet because this new thing that they're doing is not a real ad. It's one of their machines, and they detect that it's you are using some kind of ad blocking feature, and that's where the problem comes in.
Bob?
yeah, that's why I
Okay.
converted to system level ad blocking. I just tested YouTube, and it's fine for me. Um, I use a network level ad blocker. I don't use plugins, extensions anymore.
Bob?
Yeah, I there is also an extension, Ghostery, which is not list based, and it will handle a lot of stuff. I don't know if it handles
Yeah.
all of Google's ad servers, but I find that most of the videos, yeah, there'll occasionally be some ads that'll slip through, but they're handled pretty well by Ghostery if you put it into a very strict mode.
Yeah, Ghostery is a good extension.
And combine that with Firefox and you'll get better results than using Chrome.
Okay, wait a second. All right, so this is Ghostery.
Yeah, Ghostery.
Yeah. And I'm using that, but it's on a Chrome base browser.
Yeah. I think with Firefox, it's a little more effective. A lot more.
Well, also Firefox did something recently to try and address the issue of browser fingerprinting. And they're really clamping down with a new phase 2 change in their Firefox browser. And it sounds promising, but we have to wait and see how well it works out.
Yeah.
Is
And
Ghostery free?
Ghostery is free.
I've been using it.
And there are additional settings you can enable in Ghostery.
Right.
And if you enable additional settings, you'll get more effectiveness.
Right. The Ghostery I've been using for probably about 15 years.
Yeah.
What was Tim? You said your ad blocker was
That's
not being
Ghostery.
able to catch everything with YouTube. What ad blocker are you using?
Like I just said, I'm using Ghostery. And Ghostery's telling me exactly how many things in the ads, in tracking and cookies section. The bottom two are being blocked, period. But in the ads, I see the ads are being bypassed, but this Google pops in there. That's all it says. It's not like a regular ad machine. And it just says Google, and it immediately causes a problem. You'll start seeing maybe the ads start playing, but before you come back to the playing of the video you're watching, it will say you got an ad blocker, get it turned off, removed, or something, or get this premium plan that is ad free.
Dennis?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you guys are talking about. So I'll be watching a YouTube video, and after I'm watching it for a while, it'll turn into an ad.
Right.
And then after a few more seconds, maybe it's 15 seconds, there'll be something in the lower right-hand corner that I can click on that says skip ad. So are you saying that I don't even have to do that?
No.
That this Ghostery and other will just won't even play that ad at all?
First of all, no, that has nothing to do with this issue. Second of all, are you using an ad blocker in your browser? Yes or no?
No, this is on the
Okay,
Chromebook.
then you're not going to get the problem. You're going to see all the ads, period. Your Google gets all the tracking information and puts cookies on your system.
Make sense, Dennis?
I guess.
Yeah, on
so
your Chromebook,
what Tim is saying is you only see this condition exists as if you're using an ad blocker. You'll get the message that says you need to remove this or do something because Google won't let you continue watching the videos until you do something to rectify the problem. Right? Is that correct, Tim?
Yeah. If you're
So on the Chromebook, give the DuckDuckGo browser a try, and it should work for you.
Okay, something's in the chat.
Beata, try unmuting yourself. Okay? Speak up.
Drew uses a product called AdBlock 360.
I have tested that in a virtual machine, and it works flawlessly.
Okay.
I have a paid before I found out about AdBlock 360, which is free. I bought an ad blocker, so I have a paid subscription to an ad blocker that runs when my computer boots. It has nothing to do with the browsers. It's not an extension. There is no extensions. And it does a system-wide. It blocks advertising in all applications across your entire computer. It suppresses advertising, tracking, all of the silent trackers, invisible trackers, what do you name it, they're all gone. And you don't have to worry about what browser you're using because it works with all of them.
Thank you, Drew. Someone else have a new oh, yes, Harry.
Somebody had suggested a month or two back, certainly U block, the letter U and block. I've downloaded it, but I haven't installed it. Does anybody feel it's a good idea, bad idea?
It's one of the originals. My understanding that a site like YouTube probably will detect it, but most of the browser extensions like Ghostery have fine settings. So you can go in and say on ads, I want to pause just rejecting the ads and let them come through. And then I get to see what I want, even though there's a lot of ads being tossed in. So a lot of the browsers do that because they usually break them up into three categories. You have ads, you have tracking, and you have cookies. And the tracking and cookies I can block all the time, while the ads, only YouTube is being very ornery, and they say flat out in their statement blocking you from viewing anymore is to say, hey, we derive revenue from this that pays for all this. And without it, then you have a big problem of having any content from YouTube. But that's also why they give you an option. I can't remember for certain, but I think it's $7 or $9 a month extortion to get no more stoppage by YouTube of playing they won't have any ads. They take them out altogether. It's ad free. Now that doesn't mean that the content creator doesn't have one or more sponsors and they do their own ad for that sponsor within whatever the video is.
Thank you.
So I would like to point out that if you watch any of the CCS videos, as far as I know, they are ad-free.
Only if you're got the subscription.
But I've never seen any ad. You might get an ad in the beginning, but I've never seen any ad. Has anyone seen any ads pop up during the CCS videos?
No.
I didn't think so. Because we don't have enough volume of viewership to warrant them to start putting ads in.
That's a factor, but
we're
also
ad-free.
But also too, it may be a case where since we are a registered 501c3, that may be another reason.
Possibly. Next question, new direction. Dennis.
So if I'm understanding correctly, so on my Chromebook, I've been accumulating then a bunch of cookies from all the YouTube videos I look at?
Yeah.
And if so, where can I get in and delete them? Where are they stored?
Well, you can erase your whole drive. That'll get rid of them.
Yeah. Anybody else have any ideas?
Doesn't PC Manager
Ye-
get rid of cookies?
Yes, it does, but you have to be extra careful. And I have to put that in. Some of the programs that do cookie cleanup, they require you to use your head. And I'm not joking when I say that. As an example, if you do banking or investment, odds are you've got cookies from those locations on your system. You erase them and you have to go through validation the next time you log in. If you don't want to go through all the validation, you got to keep the cookie. Therefore, in CCleaner and a few other cleaners, you have the ability to say, oh, that's my investment or that's my bank. Move that over to a save to keep that cookie. And you do that for each one that you need to do. But that means you got to know that you need that cookie to help you log in to that account in an easier fashion than going through all kinds of hoops to prove that you are the legitimate person owning that account.
That applies to things like Amazon, if you're a regular customer at Amazon as well.
Well, it's the cookie proves that you are the customer. And that's why you can get in easier. Passcodes aren't a cookie, but they also help you get in much simpler than many other ways of doing it. All you have to do is have the proper name on the account, which could be an email address or a phone number or something like that, and then give it the pass key, and that might suffice enough, not needing the cookie. But not every company out there that you do business with online is at this present time using passkeys. So the alternative is them putting a cookie on your system once they are comfortable that you are the real live person. And the cookie does the same thing, so to speak, as the passkey does in validating this machine with you as the valid user and getting into your account easy.
What I was referring to with Amazon was if you're in the process of searching 3 different items and you want to come back tomorrow and take a look and not have to start the search all over, that is stored in cookies.
Yes, a lot of different companies use cookies in different ways. They may save information that maybe you don't like or don't want, but at the same time, too, it can be very advantageous. But hackers and malware, the right kind, there's many varieties of malware, may steal your cookies, and they got that information. Now they know more about you, and they also know some things you're interested in.
Harry, I think the answer to your question about Amazon and your shopping history is all kept on their servers. It's not on your local machine. The local machine handles some cookies, but most of that browsing history, purchase history, whatever you've been doing is kept at Amazon itself, because the reason I feel this is the way it is because I've logged in from different machines, my same account, and it knows just what I was looking at on the other machine or last week or whatever. So if I was using my laptop one week and I'm using my tablet the next, the tablet has all that, it's all on their servers. So everything I shopped on will show up on the tablet.
Yeah, I can confirm that. I am probably one of the most fanatical cookie cleaners and system cleaners you'll meet. And every time I go to Amazon, I get suggestions based on my purchase history and excuse me, suggestions. And if I have something where I've said save for later, it's still there.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of us like to clean up a lot of cookies. Some of us like to save some. And CCleaner has been rearranging itself a lot lately, but their latest update to their update makes it a little easier to select which cookies to keep.
Bob, would you mind showing us how to do this in CCleaner? Would you share a screen showing how to do this?
I don't
you don't have to go
save
through the
cookies in CCleaner, so I don't even know.
Okay. What product do you use to do this?
But I clean up using CCleaner, but I have it set to clean everything I can find to clean that isn't going to mess up my system.
Okay. What product are you using to clean up your cookies?
Like I say,
I use a product called BleachBit. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of BleachBit.
BleachBit for Windows.
Yeah.
Drew, would you like to show us that?
Yeah, I suppose I can do that.
We got the real glasses on now.
Yes, now I got because now I actually have to see the screen. Yeah, BleachBit. This is I have to share my screen, I guess, so that you can see it. Share. And we're gonna. You see the my screen now?
Yes.
AdBlocks 360.
Yep. And there's NordVPN, and here is BleachBit. This is the BleachBit interface. It's very simple. It's a good replacement for CCleaner because it has no third-party advertising. They don't push anything on you. There's no upgraded version. And basically, you have all of your browsers are on the left-hand side here, and you just decide which one you would like to look at and perhaps clean. So I'm going to say Microsoft Edge, and I'll click on the cache just for kicks, and then I'll hit preview, and it says disk-based recovered 0. So then I'll click on cookies or storage, or maybe just do all of Edge, and say preview it. And now it says that it will delete all of this information that you see here and recover 6.7 megabytes, delete 53 files and 15 special operations. I don't know what those are, but it'll get rid of all of these files that you see here, including all of these cookies. And then if I just say clean, it asks for confirmation, and then you're done. And that's it. That's all you got to do. And you just do that for each of your browsers.
Now, Drew, can you select cookies to keep?
No.
Okay, I can demo the CCleaner.
Yeah, please. And also how to designate which cookies to keep.
Well, maybe.
Well, just do one or two.
Let's see here. There it is.
And is this the most recent CCleaner?
It's fairly recent. It may not be the absolute newest one.
No, it's not. I have 7. I can give a little preview of what 7 looks like. It's way different.
The main thing here is you go down to options on the left side, and there's the second item is cookies. This column here is all the cookies that found. This column is the ones you want to keep. And if I were to come down here, I'm going to say PC World, we'll say, is an investment company I'm with. I would highlight that and say move it over here. Now that one will be kept. Anything else on the left side would be deleted. If I choose to say, hey, maybe I don't want to do business with PC World anymore. I highlight it on that side and move it back to this side. And the next time I do a cleaning, it will be removed. That's basically how it deals with cookies. Now, a newer version might be out there that I haven't used CCleaner heavily in some time. I used to use it very heavily, but there's been a lot of changes going on there, and not all changes in CCleaner may be palatable.
May I share what it looks like now
Go ahead.
in version
sure.
7?
Yeah.
Because you're in for a real shock. Let me get CCleaner up. First of all, it never leaves your system tray. There's no way to get rid of that. You can't tell it to just be in the background. And this is what you get. It's all combined in one place. And it will show you what you're doing. Cookies. Now, there's either a reset to default, scan, or clean. I have never found any way in CCleaner 7 to specify which cookies to keep.
Check your settings.
There are no options.
Boy, they did tighten the screws on that. That makes me want to use the current version even less.
Exactly. And that has been a problem that has been noted in their forums. And you can blame the company Avast. They own the place.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, so they're not discriminating against little, one cookie or two cookies. They're saying we're going to get rid of all of them now.
They have apparently removed that and a lot of the other things that were options.
Yeah. And BleachBit works on Linux too, by the way.
Yeah, it does. But again, BleachBit has that same thing where it's all or nothing on cookies. That's all I'm pointing out. I'm going to do a little search of my own online, see if their latest update actually has restored the ability to choose which cookies to keep. And if there's anything to report, I can report later.
Thank you, Bob. All right, next question, new direction. Yes, Dennis.
I really didn't get a clarification on what I was trying to ask before. So on my Chromebook, are all the cookies going into a particular folder? Can I access that folder and can I delete individual cookies?
If you're using the Chrome browser on the Chromebook, you can go into settings and navigate to an area where you can selectively delete cookies that were used in the last hour, the last 24 hours, the last week. You can go in and delete specific cookies if you want.
In settings,
just do that it's part of the Chrome browser.
Right. And
on the Chromebook.
Only browsers bring in cookies, period. So it's got to be a browser, and you cannot get probably to the exact file where they are stored. And so your original question there is no, you can't get to it that way. You have to use other tools, and the browsers usually will give you some way of getting into the cookies and doing some maintenance. But it's usually was not an easy way of doing it. CCleaner, in its previous lifetime, used to have a good way of getting into all the cookies in all the browsers you have on your system and allow you to manage them and say, I want to keep these, everything else you can get rid of.
Yeah.
Okay. From what Tim said before, which kind of hit me, it's like, okay, yeah, you log into your bank and you're creating cookies, but I just wanted to, but then it hit me, well, what if I I know today I'm not going to log into the bank, and I'll go into what Drew was suggesting, settings, and say, okay, just delete all the cookies for today or something,
Right.
because I know I didn't access my bank or anything else I really wanted to. Then that might work for me. It sounds.
Well, what'll happen is you go back to your bank and they're going to challenge you to validate who you are.
When
If the cookie was there,
I
they
think,
would.
Dennis, you need to think about when you go and initiate that function of delete the cookies from today, that's going to be from today as well as the past.
Oh,
That's the way I see it.
Not,
You're
That's correct.
not everything up through today.
up to today, right?
No, you can go in.
You can do past 24 hours.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, you can say I'm looking at Chrome right now. You can choose between the last 15 minutes, the last 1 hour, the last 24 hours,
okay.
or the last 7 days.
Okay.
Firefox isn't even that granular, but yes, you can.
Okay.
By the way, I found the way CCleaner now lets you select cookies.
Show us.
Show us, please.
Because this is wild. Let me close this. All right, there's this custom clean, and then just a minute, let me get CCleaner up again. Way up at the upper right, you probably can see a little thing called settings. And this is under custom clean. And now you can do trusted sites, cookies, files to clean, add, files to ignore, all the other things we used to have, secure deletion, all these other things. That is the most recent version update of CCleaner 7. They just added it back. So it's settings under custom clean. They removed it and then due to the protests they brought it back. So that's how it works, and this is their site with the instructions.
Well, they've been for a number of years trying to automate the cleanup process by doing a scan, making recommendations, et cetera, and I always used custom myself.
Yeah. I don't like anything to happen automatically, including Glare utilities.
Yeah.
I do custom there. Although I will do their one cleanup for just a quick clean.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, next question, new direction? No. So I sent out a bunch of topics for us to go through today. And I'm sure everyone wants to know the first thing that's on that list about my SSD saga. And I'll go ahead and start that thought. To recap, last month I presented the information that I had purchased an SSD at a bin store, and it was a brand new sealed in a box from Samsung. Had a value of close to over $200, and I picked it up for $7, and it was a 2 terabyte M.2 SSD. Well, last month I reported that I took that drive and stuck it onto an external card reader so that I could test it, because there were reports that it could be bogus. And then I ran the software that Samsung has called Samsung Magician, and Samsung Magician reported back that the drive actually is counterfeit. And it says, beware, this device is not a genuine brand SSD. So now I was worried. I was like, oh, great. This was a waste of $7. Okay, but it was a fun exercise. But it looked legit. Everything seemed to compare out correctly. The serial numbers did. The seals on the box, everything was perfect on there. So I was questioning this. So I did a little more digging on Reddit. And on Reddit, I found that apparently when you're doing this testing that I did, where I stuck it onto an external drive reader, the drive reader does not handle the information the serial number transfers correctly or all the time, and can give you a false positive that it was a counterfeit drive. That being said, I said, well, okay, it's not going to hurt me anything, so I cloned the drive, and then I went and installed it in this machine that I've got right here, and lo and behold, Samsung Magician now says your drive is fine. So, and I can illustrate that in just a second here. Let me just pull up my shared screen. And there you have it. So previously it said that this was a bogus drive, and now it does not. So the problem was the fact that the external M.2 drive caddy that I was using to clone the drive with was not translating the information across correctly. And so this drive is legit, works just fine. As you could see, we've got no error messages on here. And I now have a 2 terabyte drive that I picked up for $7.
Sanford?
Yes, sir.
Samsung Magician itself warns you. Do not use Magician on anything that isn't Samsung, and do not use it on any drive that is mounted other than internally.
Right.
This is one of several ways in which the problems show up.
And being an amateur, this is what that was the course of action that I took, and I can confirm that they are correct. Having external versus internal can give you false readings.
And there are 2 other things you do not want to try to do on an external drive unless you've set it up and really verified that it can do it. One is trying to trim it, to do the trim function, garbage collection, and the other is any kind of secure erase.
Right.
If you try to do that on an external drive, you don't know what's going to happen.
So if anyone wants to know, this is what the drives look like. It's an M.2. Mine is similar to this one in here that has a heat sink built on it, and it came in a box like this guy. Except mine was a 2 terabyte. It's a 990 Pro. So I got a good deal.
I suspect that was a return.
It was still sealed, and it probably was a return. I initially stated last month that I thought that it could have been one that was reported as being bogus, and Amazon or whoever pulled them all off the shelf or something like that and was just offloading them. But I feel now that was an incorrect supposition, and this drive is legit. So I came out ahead. 2 terabyte drive for $7. Yay. I will say cloning the drive was a little complicated, trying to find the right software that would take my data and expand it across correctly. That is, enlarge the drives. Some software just wanted to clone it 1-to-1, and other ones wanted to distort all the other partitions to much larger than they needed to be. And I think Ease Use finally did. I got Ease Use to do it.
That or Mini Tool.
I think that I'm not sure which of the 2 I wound up using, because I tried several different products out there until I got it to work right. And then finally I got it to separate the drives into making the C drive per se to be the largest partition.
Why I prefer Mini Tool is that it can also handle Linux partitioning.
Okay.
Yeah, I've used Mini Tool before.
Okay, so that was my quick story about my Samsung SSD, and I'm currently running it here. Works no problem. I've had no issues with it since I've had it in since last month. Okay, I also had a whole bunch of other topics on there that I had sent out to people. Feel free to give me a comment on which, or tell me which number of the item we'd like to go over.
Can we do the one about USB port colors?
What number is that?
Number 2, is it?
2. Got it. Thank you.
It is 2.
Okay, so this person finally learned what the colors mean. So the colors, someone want to elaborate? What is the reasoning for colors on USB ports? Anyone? Okay, well, kind of happens.
I can offer one perspective. It's historic.
Okay.
And that is, historically, they had, the white was for the USB 2.
No.
Then when they went to USB 3, was it before USB 2 that they started with white?
1.1 for white. USB 2 was black. Blue is USB 3. Teal is 3.1. And I don't know how you tell the blue and the teal apart. My eyes aren't that good, I guess.
So how come my USB 2 devices often have white?
That's because there's a lot of manufacturers out there of stuff that don't follow the coding color.
But it says here USB or white is 1.1.
Right, 1.1 or 1.0 were white. I have systems that go back that far that have those colors. And also you get some generic cables that come with white in the cable, but they'll plug into anything and go at the rate of the port actual speed or as fast as it can go. It depends upon the wiring that's associated with the cable.
Anyone else want to comment on this?
And you also have orange, you got yellow, you've got...
well, there's red and yellow. I didn't see orange.
Yeah, you got red, yellow is also on some systems. Again, it may not be following code. You're assuming all the manufacturers say, yes, sir, and this is exactly the way it's going to be. Well, sorry, they don't do that. And I'm not kidding when I say that. And sometimes they do make the charging port a little bit different, but the standard is supposed to be the printed emblem on the body of the device nearest that port to indicate, is it just plain USB? Is it USB charging? Or is it some other higher speed port, such as 10 megabits per second, 20 megabits per second, Thunderbolt 3, Thunderbolt 4, Thunderbolt 5, I think, is out.
Well, Thunderbolts are not USB ports.
Yep, they're USB-C, all USB-C on that.
Yeah.
And all the devices that are fairly new are going from A to C.
And Thunderbolt Apple is not the same as Thunderbolt Windows.
Right.
Correct.
And it
really?
used
Bob, you want to elaborate on that?
It used a unique adapter.
Thunderbolt for Apple was one of the early adoptions of Thunderbolt, and it didn't have all the wiring which a current Thunderbolt for Windows will have from Thunderbolt 3 up through 5. So Thunderbolt 3, Thunderbolt 4, Thunderbolt 5 will have more features. It will support more different kinds of devices, and it would not be backward compatible with older Apple devices.
Correct, because they were a different type of connector.
Why can someone answer the question, when you're using a USB 3.0 and you plug it into an external hard drive, the hard drive, mostly they have a flat connector on there.
Yeah.
With a little dimple in the middle or something like that. But why are they doing that versus just a standard USB plug on there?
It's a combination of USB connection and power coming from the computer itself. So at that end that has that dimple that you're talking about, it's separating real USB normal connection for data and port voltages from voltages that are used to make the actual drive internal to the device work.
Is it for better throughput?
No, it doesn't equate to better throughput. It's just a case of they want to make sure that it's not a plain USB being plugged into the storage device that's external. That device usually has that wider flat connection with that dimple in between to make it unique.
And this also appears even on drives like my desktop drives, which have a power supply input. They still have that flat connector because there still is the data wires are still a particular way, and the power wires are still wired a particular way.
Right. It's just a standard to make sure that you can get USB external drive adapters that have a Type A connection only, and you can plug any USB 3 cable into that external device and into a like port on the computer, and it just uses what looks like normal USB Type A at both ends. The other drives.
This is the
that
cable
type.
I'm discussing here, so
That's
people know what I'm
correct.
referring to.
That's correct. And that distinguishes, it's kind of like the USB Type D for devices that were usually printers that you would plug into a USB port. The other end was squarish with two of the corners chamfered, whereas this here is also unique to a device at one end and a standard USB Type A connector at the computer end.
It also might be because they're making sure that the grounding between the two devices is on the same plane.
So you can't
A lot of times in electronics, you got to keep the grounding continuous to keep a reference correct between the power supplies. I know on a lot of Arduinos and a lot of Raspberry Pis, when you hook up devices with different power supplies, you actually have to bridge the ground or the neutral line between the different devices. And it may be because of that. I'm not for sure. I haven't looked into that, but that's an educated guess.
Pete, what you say reminds me of something that Brian Livingston recently posted to Ask Woody newsletter. Sometimes these USB-C connectors that seem to be reversible, you have to turn them over in order to get the full throughput rate because the wiring inside is not symmetrical. And some devices don't recognize this.
And I've also found, I can concur to that because I've taken USB-C cables, tried to plug them into my phone to make it charge, nothing happens. Flip it over, no problem. It works.
There is on Amazon and eBay, there is a USB cable device that you plug your cables into, and it gives you information about the cables, because also when you get into USB-C cables, there's several different grades of USB-C cables, and they may be part of your problem of getting something to work.
Yeah, there's that too.
Where is that?
But this has to do with the port.
Yeah, and if you remember old, especially inkjet printers, but also some lasers too, and they used a USB Type A to USB Type D, which is kind of squarish, and that caused a problem.
This is similar to what you're referring to, some type of tester here.
Well, the one I'm thinking of looks completely different. It has a ton of LED ideas. This is testing.
I've got several ones. This is just one I happened to pull down a manual for that I could pop up here.
But this
and
is
so you could change. This could be a USB-C here connector, but it's going to tell you how many volts and all kinds of good stuff in
that's
here.
only testing the port, not the cable.
No, well, it's not testing the.
What I'm talking about is an actual cable tester.
Well, if I may, you're plugging the other end here on the right-hand side is actually going to be your USB cable. It's going to plug into there. And it's going to measure the throughput voltage-wise in milliamps through that cable.
That may
so
not
it's
give you...
similar to what you're talking about.
This may not give you all the details of whether the cable is capable of doing the work you want done.
Yeah, quality control has been a problem with USB cables.
It really has, especially the USB-C.
Yep. That's what I mean, USB-C.
And that has been a big headache. The other one that's had lots of headaches is HDMI.
Okay, but we don't use HDMI for data transfer unless we're sending a video to our TVs. I have not run across any external drives that use HDMI.
You use a data capture card.
Okay, but again, I've never seen it connected up to an external hard drive.
No, it's used on a data capture card, which is an SSD type device. It probably at one time was a spinning hard drive, and it's used by a lot of people who create video content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have one of those.
Yeah. Those cards have some interesting restrictions when it comes to what will and will not be captured.
Especially
and also,
DRM.
Sometimes a little finicky on the cables you use, because you may have cables that work fine in normal use, going to a monitor or a TV, and on the capture device it says, "The heck with you! This is garbage."
Right. Okay. Shall we go on to a new question or topic?
Well, let me question what we're talking about yet.
Yes.
Okay. I have got an inkjet printer, and it's got the squared port on the printer. The cable is squared off at one end and the regular USB at the other.
Yeah.
Right.
And I've got it connected to this laptop, and the laptop isn't recognizing it. It is, how do I say this? It is one of the printers that's, I can say it's in the default list, but when you look at the list, it is grayed out. I don't know how to highlight it and say it's actually there.
You can't print to this printer?
That's what I'm telling you. Yeah, I could before, but after a few of the updates were done by Microsoft, it doesn't recognize it anymore.
Did you try?
You got a bad update.
Did you try deleting the printer from your profile and then reinstalling it?
No.
It's
Okay,
that,
so
or
that-
you got to get into Device Manager, find the driver, and you can do a rollback on the properties under drivers. And there's a rollback feature that'll bring back the last update of the driver, and that may make it work again. I'm not joking when I say that. When it comes to drivers, there is a big headache. They push a lot of driver updates, not recognizing the age and characteristics of your computer. And so you get drivers that are meant for newer hardware than what you're on, and that's it goes from a working system to a non-working system. I've run into that problem quite a few times, and that especially with Wi-Fi and sometimes also display drivers. I don't use USB printers, so but that is a known big issue with USB connected printers.
Tom, what brand of printer is this?
It's an Epson.
It's an Epson. Epsons are usually pretty good.
It's not the
Has
printer.
anyone else got a suggestion on how to solve the problem? I suggested uninstalling it and then
I'm pretty sure it is the driver. Like Tim is suggesting.
Yes.
Okay.
And
all right, that
if
would
you
be
go
your
to
best way.
Printers, find that printer listed, right click, say, give me the properties of that printer. The second tab is your drivers, and you should see down there one of the buttons called rollback. And you click that rollback, and it'll bring back the previous driver, and it might work. It depends how many updates you have gotten for that device. It may get so old that it's dropped off as junk anymore. And in which case, you've got to go out and find an older driver on your own and install that in its place.
And don't be too discouraged. Epson is pretty good about retaining older drivers on their website.
Right.
So if you know the model, you probably can find a driver. If not, you may need to use a generic driver.
And just re-download it and install it, and it may solve your problem also.
None of the software updater programs for drivers that I have seen to date seem to have built in some kind of a guideline as to what qualifies this driver for this hardware, and analyzes it and says, oh, this driver is not for your machine because it's wants newer specifications. So I'm going to leave your old driver that is working alone. I have not seen that anywhere.
I've run into a couple times in the latest updates that my wireless driver disconnects because of the update, and I've had to uninstall it in a manager like Stanford says, and then re-find it and then put it back in, and then it fires up and it works after a reboot. And when you do that, you have to turn off the printer too. In that sequence.
It's a headache, and I don't
That's the
see any solution to it so far. I've had that particular problem for 10 to 15 years now.
Well, I can say that the updates have been put in on both of my systems, both the older machine and this more current laptop. And the laptop isn't recognizing it, but my old system does, and both are in Windows 11.
Well, it could be that they didn't get the driver update the other machine did get.
That can happen.
Anything is possible. No two machines are alike.
Like I say,
understand.
there is no software to update drivers that really checks out what was this driver meant to update hardware-wise, and what is your current hardware. Because if they don't match, the device may no longer work. And that's where the rollback feature comes in. It'll put the old driver back in place until the next time an update comes along, and does the same thing again and again and again and again until something dies.
Right.
Yeah, and by the way, that does not apply to manufacturer tools like the Intel Driver and Update Assistant. The Driver and Support Assistant does detect which hardware you've got and will not offer you a driver that is not appropriate for your hardware.
But a lot of the update drivers come through Windows Update.
Exactly. Those tend to be more haphazard.
Well, sort of the other updater programs. I'm not joking, because I've tried several, and they do the same thing Microsoft does too. But the Intel one doesn't work on everything.
No. Epson has one, has a tool similar to that one for their printers. So you can identify the printer, and you can identify which driver is the right one.
That way,
unless they dropped support for it.
No, I don't think they dropped support because it's not that old of a printer.
Then you should be able to use the site.
Okay, what was that site?
Just go to the Epson website and go to drivers and updates, drivers and software for the printers, and you'll be asked for your model.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it'll take a little digging on your end, but you'll be able to get it right from the manufacturer, and that would be a good Band-Aid too, or a good thing to have, because if it breaks in the future, you just reinstall that driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So keep
it
that
in your
driver
vest
in a
pocket.
folder that might be available.
Keep it in your vest pocket.
I think that would be the best route to take to get this thing, because I've tried a few things already, and I know it's the driver that's doing it to me.
I won't go into details, but there are ways to screen Windows updates and screen out those drivers that you don't want. But you need to know something about PowerShell these days. So, not for amateurs.
No, and I am an amateur, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We're all amateurs.
Yeah, I know.
Except for Tim.
Yeah.
Right.
And Drew.
And Drew.
You're going to leave Bob out of this?
I'm not a pro. I don't have people pay me.
That's the difference. Bob doesn't get paid for this.
Well, thank you, guys.
You're welcome. All right, shall we go on to a new topic?
Yeah.
Number 6.
Number 6. Tricks to squeeze out every feature out of your Roku setup. All right.
No. Collection of freeware.
Wait.
Amazon Prime. Oh, wait a second. Sorry.
Are you talking about the Price Watchers?
That's number 7.
Number 7, collection of freeware.
Price Watcher is 7 on my list.
Yeah. 7 is Price Watchers.
Okay, Price Watchers. Let me close this one down. Got the wrong one going then. Price Watchers. So, this is...
Camel is the one I use.
Camel is the one I've always been using. You can download a plugin that goes onto the Firefox browser, and it puts this little icon right up here. If you look by my little mouse pointer, it looks like a camel, and that goes in your search bar. And then whenever you're on Amazon, if I go to Amazon and I pull up whatever, here I'll just find a product here. let's say batteries. There you go. And this battery pack here. And if I just go to camel, 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 hopefully you'll see this pop up here. Oh, not seen that before. Usually it identifies the item, but it couldn't because there were several ads or something on this page. So let me find a, here, try if that works. Does that work? What's going on here?
You got a lot of ads on the right side.
You got to go in one deeper. You got to go one deeper.
One deeper. Oh, you mean on the product?
Yeah.
Okay.
Click on that. Click on there, right there.
Got it.
Right.
Got it. It needs to be full screen. All right. And now camel, 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 as you can see here, will show you a chart with the trend of what the price is. And they'll show it to you on Amazon, third party, new and used. So I've been using this product. Now you do not have to use the plugin for Firefox to use this service, which is free. If you wish, all you do is go up here to the search bar and copy that, search for that item. We'll go to camel, 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 and in this where it says find Amazon products, you paste the URL in there and it'll do the same thing. So it'll pull it up, it will show you the price history right here, right on their website.
So it only works for Amazon? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry, you can't have the world at your fingertips on everything. But it does work very well. I had noticed a new trend on some of the items where if you look here, right underneath the price of this, Amazon's been putting price history. And on the left-hand side, their AI is showing you the price history. I found that there's a disparity between what's being displayed here on the left-hand panel versus what camel, camel, camel says. So who's telling us the truth here? Don't know. One of the other things, got camel, 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 and there was another item, another price watcher. And let's see what that one is.
Keepa.
Keepa. I've never used this. Keepa. Keepa? Keepa. It's been around since 2019. How to install it? So it is an add-on for your iPhone. Oh, it's a mobile one. You can use it with Edge, Android, and iOS, but I don't see it as a PC. Is it a PC enabled device? Anyone know? Anyone use this? No. You can go to the there is a extension. So let's see what that looks like. Price history charts. So you can put it here on Firefox. You can put it on all these other browsers.
Now, what was that chart there trying to show us?
The price of that item.
Well, it seems to be showing us in one, two, or three, at least three different locations or manufacturers. What?
Well, it's probably doing, as I said, on camel, camel, camel. Here, let me pull up a camel, camel one. And here, You see in the middle, we have one line, a graph coming across, because we only have a third-party new to report. But if there would have been other categories here, like Amazon giving you a price, third-party new, many devices, many things sold on Amazon are not sold. Amazon's like the middleman. Somebody else is selling it.
They also serve as a portal.
Right. So that's what this is they're telling you this is not necessarily our product. If it was an Amazon product, then they may have a green line that's illustrated here. Someone correct me if I'm going along the wrong supposition on here. But that's the way I interpret it. Well, let's find another product. I don't know what.
There are things which are stocked by Amazon. There are things which are third-party sellers.
Right.
And in that case, Amazon is acting as a marketplace.
So let's see. Let's see what this.
You see a lot more of this marketplace stuff on sites like Temu.
Yeah, let's see. It's Camel has anything on this one. All right, so this one, there was two other prices available. There was third-party new and third-party used. I'm assuming you guys can see this graph?
Yes.
Right. And so this is showing the price trends on this particular item. You can see it goes up and down a lot based on, market fluctuations. So it goes anywhere from $8.99 to $9.74.
Where's Amazon's graph on the left?
Well, let's go and pull that up. That's a separate graph. That's done by Amazon. And that's over here where it says price history. And there's their graph.
Okay, can we see the camel one again?
So, whose is correct? They're showing, but the one on the left is only showing from November 10th to today. It is not, let's go 3 months. Does that look similar?
Go to 1 month.
That's what I have, is 1 month.
Now it's closer.
Yeah, they're a little closer.
Close to the left side of the left-hand chart.
Right.
But it doesn't show the right side of the left column chart.
Yeah, it's very similar information here. Now, where is Camel getting it from versus Rufus AI? You would think Rufus AI is that's Amazon, so it'd be more accurate. Point is, when you're shopping on Amazon and the likes, they often they change their prices all the time, and often based off of your purchase history. The prices could be modified or adjusted specifically for you on products. They may decide today we're going to give you a cheap deal on this, but the next item we're going to really take you to cleaners on.
Yeah.
They got very sophisticated software on how they market and sell products.
Well,
and
it's
price
also,
is only part of it.
It's also a case where everybody that's on the internet is got profiles of their characteristics, what they're interested in, et cetera, and that's bought and sold all across the world, and that to sellers.
Right. Does anyone else have any tools that they use for shopping? No.
Aside from my bolt clippers?
Well, on the news today, I heard about a separate site from Amazon called Amazon Refurbished. and it's a separate site, they said. It was a local news station. And they sell stuff that's either been returned, refurbished, and you can get like 15, 20, 25 or more percent from new.
Most sites have that as an example.
Do they?
Dell, who is a manufacturer that sells online, has a Dell outlet. And there are other businesses that have the same kind of thing, that for items that are returned that are not irreparably damaged,
Okay.
they will either classify them open box, in which case they cannot sell it for the retail price. It's got to be less than, and it may
Okay.
or may not say refurbished. Usually, refurbished means somebody at least inspected it to make sure that it works absolutely correct, or had to correct a problem that the customer did find and get it corrected. And by usually sending it back to the manufacturer then takes the fixed products and sends it back to various vendors as a refurbished product to be sold at a cheaper price.
Sometimes you'll see on the right-hand side here, in this panel here, you may see refurbished prices, products available and their pricing.
Also used prices as well for stuff that was traded in perhaps for newer equipment, and they're not going to refurbish it, they're not going to clean it up. It's sold as is, used.
So this is what I did is did a search for Amazon refurbished and found this site here, which I think is just it's part of Amazon. It's just a different way of filtering the products.
Right.
So you're only seeing these items instead of everything else.
And I know Dell does basically the same thing, and I'm pretty positive several of the other major manufacturers of electronics do the exact same thing.
CDW has the same thing too. They have a refurbished spot.
I don't doubt that at all, because bottom line, when they get back returns, usually they're open and they cannot be sold again at the normal pricing of a new. That's against the law. And two, if there is really something wrong with it, most of the time that individual company cannot do the repair themselves. Some can, especially like if it's a PC repair shop, they might do the refurbishing themselves, and they'll state that's the case. But usually, if it's damaged, it may go back to the real manufacturer. They correct the product. Now they want to get rid of the product. Okay, what vendors are interested in this refurbished product here? And this is the price we would like you to give us for that refurbished product. And then you would tack on whatever your markup is, along with maybe shipping and taxes, etc., if they are applied. And you then have a vendor that will sell that refurbished device at a higher price.
Or you can just go to a bin store and find them there.
Well, that's assuming you have a bin store somewhere near you.
There have been a lot of areas.
Have a long walk to get to the nearest bin store.
Well, you might have to get your car fixed.
Yeah, well, you can send me over $200,000 and.
Anyways, we're not going that route. I'm just saying there you could. That's an option too. Is they are out there as an alternative place to find refurbished.
Most of them I looked before, and most of them are in Illinois, and they're far enough away that you're talking a pretty like an hour or two trip.
Well, then it doesn't work for you.
No, it
It doesn't work for me either.
Okay. I don't know. Did you try looking and see? I never looked to see bin store. Maui. There's one in Honolulu.
Well, he can swim to get over there and swim back.
Yeah, it looks like.
Ben Franklin.
Second Heaven. That's Arkansas. Mekawau.
I already go to secondhand heaven.
You already do?
Yeah.
You find anything good there, Pete?
Yeah, that's a twice a week pilgrimage for me and Margaret.
Okay. There you go.
But they're just a standard thrift store attached to a church.
So you want a new business, you can go and create a business. Why don't you start up a bin store business?
Shipping.
Well, I don't know. Amazon returns that are done in your state have to go somewhere. And do you believe that Amazon is going to ship them all the way back to the States?
I know we have to return to a FedEx store.
Oh, you can't go there like Kohl's or anything?
What?
Kohl's? The store Kohl's.
Kohl's department store.
No, it goes. The returns here to Amazon go into a FedEx store, FedEx drop-off point, and they have bins there, but I don't know where the bins go to.
In my area, we use Amazon stores. We use Whole Foods.
Whole
Whole
Foods.
Foods Amazon. They have an Amazon department at Whole Foods.
Let's see.
I had to do a return because something got shipped that was wrong.
We also have Amazon Fresh grocery stores here, and they will take it as well.
You've got about 25 times the population that we have here, right? Because the non-seasonal, non-tourist population of Maui is at about 125,000, which is like Naperville.
Wow.
And that's over the entire island. And people from Hana don't come down to the city except for once a month. People here, if it's 20 miles, people here don't drive it. They think coming down from 12 miles uphill down to the big city and big city center is a real trip. Unless they're going to the beach. And they only go to the beach when the surf's up.
All right. Does anyone else have any hacks for shopping online? No. Okay. Number 9, at least on my screen, is managing your Google account via settings. Now, back in 2021, Bob did a presentation on some of the features here, and I'm just giving him kudos to that because it came up when I was doing a little research here. But I will add that your Gmail account, to access some of the settings, you need to go into the Workspace Smart Features in Gmail. And I have here that I can put in the chat a list of instructions on how to get there and what you can do. Some of the things you can do, let's first show this, is you would open Gmail and you access the gear icon from settings, you go to the smart features and then manage it. And I'm kind of glossing over this because I'll put this in there. So let's pull up the screen. think, hopefully this is not going to kill me. I think Bob also illustrated that takeout program. So if you go into Gmail and you go into settings, you should be able to come to here, to this page. And hopefully I can describe this very well. But this will give you the ability to effectively alter the way your emails are, your Gmail is displayed, and you'll be able to change fonts, images, grammar, blah, 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 blah. You can also set up auto correction, Smart Compose to help you with writing. That is a kind of like Grammarly, I think. But one of the things you can do here is you can go up to your search your email, and you can specifically say, put in this phrase, older than 5 years. And now what it's doing is it's only showing me Gmails that are older than 5 years that are sitting in my Gmail account. And you can just arbitrarily click here and delete them off if you want it. And I just picked 5 years out of the blue. But if you found that your Gmail account is getting a little unruly, too big, maybe it's time to purge some of the old stuff. You don't have to purge everything. You can just purge part of it, and you can pick and choose what you want to get rid of. Obviously, you can choose this here to be 5 months, and now it'll only illustrate everything that's from 5 months. We can choose this from 7 years. This is a pretty neat thing that you can do for managing your emails that are in your Gmail account if you need to do a little maintenance and cleanup, which you should do every once in a while, especially if your Gmail account is starting to grow in size past or close to what your limit is. I believe there might be also...
Can you search on size?
I was just going to say, I think there might be a way to do it by size.
Because that's how I clean up my inbox, is I sort the mailbox by size.
Let's go.
I get rid of...
I'm just going to size. What would you say? Greater than?
Well, I do searches on mine that says if it has an attachment bigger than 5 megabytes or something like that.
Okay, there you go. There's attachment. And let's see. I was going to choose.
Question is the syntax.
Meg. See if that does anything. Okay, so this came up greater than 5 megs.
The syntax is actually the word larger, colon, and then the size.
Larger, colon,
and how many megabytes or gigabytes? Probably megabytes.
Let's see. 5M. There you go. So it is a way to go through and sort your emails. Wow, this is pretty cool.
See what it's not telling you is the individual size. Like this one is 3 megs, this one is 10 megs.
No, it's not telling me that.
I wonder if you can do an in between. Like larger than 5, less than 7.
I would say there's. You could probably play around with this to your blue.
You can do has attachment, has colon attachment larger colon.
Yeah.
Well, it has attachment.
I access my Gmail with Thunderbird, and then Thunderbird lets me sort the mailbox by size, and I can delete emails that have attachments greater than 10 megabytes.
All right, I just said delete. Let's go by the sort.
there is something else that I wanted to touch on in this workspace. Besides the factor that I'm trying to get back here to that screen that I was looking at before, but bear with me. Where was I? Let me stop sharing. There you go. Search. Workspaces, features. So I want to get back into this workspaces to show you why we want to go into workspaces and see all settings. All right, let me share this screen. This all came about from my wife, actually, who stumbled upon this from work. That is, she had found out that Google, or learned that Google has the ability to read your emails to train AI. If you do not want Google to do that, you need to turn off some features on here, which it's going to take me a little bit to remember where she found these things. It was smart features, I think. No, manage. There it is.
Workspace.
There it is. You manage workspace smart features. And this particularly tells there, you would turn off these settings here if you do not want Google to scan your stuff and for AI.
Yeah.
You just turn those things off and they're gone.
You gotta do a save.
Sounds like a good idea.
If you don't do a save, they'll turn right back on.
Oh, probably. Yeah, if I do a save. Where's save?
Right at the bottom.
It's covered up by my thing. There you go. There you go. So this was the reason that I was enlightened or made aware of this, because Google is scanning our stuff.
So by default they read all your stuff.
Right. So you need to tell it, if you don't want them to read it, you want to turn this feature off.
Yeah.
Okay, right here, turn on smart features in Gmail. When you use this feature, you agree to let Gmail chat, blah, blah, use the content and activity of these products to provide smarter features and personalize your experience. Turn that one off. And then I'll probably need to reload Gmail. So I don't know what that's. I don't want to change anything at this second, but anyone else have experience in here?
I've just always totally turned off smart features, and you do lose some features that might be handy, but I didn't like all the other stuff it allowed, so I just totally shut off smart features altogether. But that's just
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I thought this would be very informative. If I can get my screen back. There we go. Anyone have questions on workspaces? Gmail? No. Okay. Anyone else have anything on my topics that I'd sent out?
The GNC tools, I mean, freeware.
Yeah, the freeware stuff. Let's see the freeware stuff.
All right, the collection of freeware.
We all like free.
We all like free.
GRC is Gibson's site, and he makes this software. A lot of it.
He does SpinRite, correct?
Yep.
Or Valid Drive?
That's right. And right at the top there, you've got a DNS check that's available, and you might want to look into that one.
What is that?
You can't use the internet without DNS. That's the phone book of the internet.
All right. But it says a DNS check. Let's see what that is.
It's
a benchmark. Oh,
how
for
good,
$20.
How good or how bad is your DNS? A lot of people, when they sign up with some given ISP, it doesn't matter who it is, they don't do any customization of DNS. So they end up getting the DNS service the ISP has, and they are notoriously slow. So there are a lot of open source DNS locations, and some of the browsers have features in them that will allow you to change to those free DNS services that have much better performance.
How do you know what DNS you're using?
Like I said, if you've never changed it, you're using the ISP that you are signed up with.
Yeah.
So if you're with Comcast, you're using Comcast DNS servers, period. If you're with Spectrum, you're using Spectrums, etc. However, there's Google's DNS open service, Cloudflare. There's some kind of a cloud family service. There's Startup, OpenDNS. I use that a lot. I use some Cloudflare and some of that family stuff. Once in a while, I'll use Google's DNS as well. If I'm experiencing
how do we change our DNS?
You go in, well, it depends on what your operating system is, for starters.
All right, we're on Windows, and I'm using the Firefox browser.
You go into settings, you go into networks, and you it changed from 10 and what it is in 11. And so the end result is in 11, you do it in the network settings. It gives you the ability to change it. And if you now click on your Wi-Fi, that's what you're using right now. Okay. Now, on yours here, you're using the 1.5G properties.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's your ISP. It's hexadecimal in nature, and you got to get that straight from the site for the open DNS or Google and or Cloudflare, etc. There's also one called Nines that has one as well. But you don't usually see all of the options that may be out there available. But there's about 8 to 10 open free DNS services. In Firefox, you have the option of sending your information for DNS over HTTPS. That's a very important security feature, because otherwise your DNS requests go out as plain text, and anybody that has the capability to do so can see where you're trying to go.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, so back to this free software. We have Valid Drive, In Control. I have never used any of these other softwares here, if anyone wants to comment on them.
Leak Test is a good one.
Leak
I haven't used it in a long time, but I remember using that before.
It's secure.
Any militia program give itself the
One
same.
of these, I don't know if it's the leak test or which one it is, but he used to have one that would do a security check on all your ports and let you know if you've got some insecure port settings that you might want to close, and you'd have to look up the information how to close those ports.
Beware that some of the software looks fairly old.
Oh, it is. This is going back to whenever he started making SpinRite and these other tools.
I get that, but it doesn't look like these had been updated since.
They probably haven't been because they haven't had a need for change. But a lot of them still work as advertised because the structure of the internet and or hardware has not changed. SpinRite just recently added capability of handling SSDs, which earlier this year it did not handle.
Oh, what's this Never 10?
That has been updated to In Control. In Control allows you to stay with a particular version of Windows. For example, I'm on 24H2, and I'm not going to get 25H2 until I'm damn well ready. And which should be sometime around Christmas. And then I will, on my own schedule when I have time, I will do it. What it does is it automates the process of setting the registry keys or the group policy to prevent Windows Update from suddenly in the middle of the night changing it to 25H2, or in this case, Windows 7 going up to 10 or 10 up to 11, and various other things people did not want to have happening in the middle of the night. So it's basically a way of doing things on your schedule instead of Microsoft's schedule. I don't know if it even is a schedule. Well, their rollout.
As you were scrolling through here, Sanford,
Yes.
let me ask Tim. I see several of those things mentioned the ability to work with FreeDOS. What's FreeDOS?
FreeDOS is a shall we call it a fork in Linux terms, where MS-DOS and PC-DOS were owned by Microsoft and IBM. That's proprietary. So somebody made a FreeDOS, and there's a couple other ones similar to it, where they independent people, like from the Linux community, created versions of DOS that try to be just like PC-DOS and MS-DOS were before they were replaced by Windows.
Do you use that at all, or not really?
Occasionally, yes, but it's a rare occasion. And usually what it's for is old games that were originally developed for and distributed to run on DOS.
Like
and
Doom.
They may run on versions of Windows, and they may not run correctly on Windows. So that you have to take into account. I don't do much gaming anymore, and most of what I do, I'm able to run from Windows or from Linux.
So here's the collection of freebies that they got.
Yeah,
And SpinRite. What did SpinRite do? What it does. Technical notes. Wasn't it it tested your hard drive?
Yeah, they just added in the last several months SSDs
Okay.
support, but that's a version 6 or 7. 5 is old. But some people may be that are using version 5 say, I don't need anything newer because of my old equipment. I don't need it. So they just keep running the 5. A lot of people do that. Instead of keeping their software up to date, they just leave it as is and hope that they don't run across program bugs that have never been fixed because they didn't update, and security issues.
Okay, we have time for one last topic or question.
Drew and Bob Premick both had some ideas before the meeting.
Yes. Bob?
Yes, I did. What I have found, first of all, I show of regular hands, how many people here use Macrim Reflect for backups? And this may apply both to free and paid, but I especially found that this was what happened with paid. My rescue media, the media builder, I found I had in the media that it was building, no cursor, no mouse, and no keyboard.
Good.
And
so
great. I tried rebuilding it. Same result. 2 different PCs. Okay, here's what can happen. Macrim Reflect has a building mechanism that uses a cache. That cache comes pre-populated. You download the contents of that cache the very first time you install the program. Or if you get a new version, you might get a new WinPE or WinRE. And that cache can become corrupted in a way that it won't pick up the drivers anymore when you build the media. So Macrim Reflect has an uninstaller that's located in the old-fashioned control panel, and it has several checkboxes. And I might be able to share a screen, and I might be able to bring it up, but I might need to be logged in as administrator. Let's see how this works. I'm going to share what this uninstaller will show you. I am going to try to find the remove uninstall programs. Here we are, control panel. And this is the old-fashioned control panel. Uninstall a program. And you scroll down to Macrim Reflect. And I'll try to get this done pretty quickly. And it will want this. And you can either uninstall Macrim Reflect, which I don't want to do. You can remove definition settings and scheduled tasks. You can remove the logs, or you can remove the WinPE component. That's what you want to do. Now, I won't go ahead and do it because I just did it. And when you do that, it clears away that cache. Now, when you rebuild, it should be able to pick up drivers again.
It'll re-download them.
It won't re-download anything. It'll take what it's got on board and it'll repopulate. It'll show you in the process. It'll say clearing the scratch space, and then rebuilding the scratch space, and then it'll rebuild the WinPE. And what that usually will do is restore the ability to pick up the drivers. And then I found it worked perfectly well. And one feature that wasn't working before in the rescue environment was working now. But another feature that wasn't working so well, same thing. But it would be able to rescue me.
Thank you, Bob.
Always check to make sure your rescue media can boot and you can use them.
Yeah, and they tell you that right off the bat, when you create the rescue media, you got to test it out that you can boot your computer from the rescue media. Because if you cannot boot from the rescue media, you can't restore your backup unless the system is still running. in which case you can restore from the running system.
And even if you can boot, make sure you've got the necessary drivers to navigate.
Right.
Drew, you had something you wanted to bring up to the group?
Well, I try to remember. Can you give me a refresher as to what it was?
Tim might remember.
I don't remember the detail right now. I know you were saying that there was something that you had talked about in the past or to another group that you were going to talk about. I just don't know.
Well, most recently I did a video on a program called Ferdium for Tech for Senior that I was presented yesterday on the live Tech for Senior show.
How do you spell that? Or can you pull up the screen? Ferdium?
It's called
FERDIUM. I believe it's .org.
Yeah, Ferdium. FERDIUM. And it's basically a program that lets you do a bunch of web apps. So if I can share and bring this guy up. On the left-hand side, I have all these icons. I've got my pCloud Drive, Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, Perplexity, ChatGPT, Gmail, Discord, another ChatGPT, simple login. These are all web apps, and they're all running in a browser environment, and it's all running inside this program called Ferdium, so that you can, instead of having to open up a web browser, you can see I have Chrome open, but I'm not using it. This is the program called Ferdium, and it enables you to consolidate web apps into one little window environment. Makes it very convenient to use all of these different feature services. And that's what my video was on yesterday at Tech for Senior. It basically just brings up the web page, and I don't know why it's not going to Copilot right now, the way it's pulling up Gemini nice and quick. But let me do a refresh. Reload. Not working. Let me cancel out of here and go back in again. End task, and now we'll go back into Ferdium again. Come on. Yeah, now we've launched Ferdium, and let's see if I can get to Microsoft now. Yeah, there's Copilot. I just needed to restart it. I've got my simple note, diagramming stuff. I got my Copilot. Here's my Discord logged in. My pCloud Drive files. It's very convenient. It's a nice little app, and it's completely free.
We like free.
Well, it's another case where whether you use one browser or you use a bunch of browsers, which isn't necessarily a bad idea, especially between a Chromium-based browser versus a Firefox-based type browser. They're different, and they may show websites differently. The same one. We have a habit of having a lot of websites that we frequent. such as maybe your banking or some investment application that's online, the drugstore, the grocery store, whatever the case may be. There may be a whole bunch of different ones that various people frequently go to. This is one way of taking that URL address, putting it into the Freedom, making it a web-based app, and the Freedom acts as a launcher. And it just launches that one website at a time, not the whole browser.
Thank you, Drew.
Yep.
And with that, are there any last questions for the group?
Well, I have a question. It seems that somehow I've stepped on Microsoft Word. I've brought in, I think it's called Only Office, and the formats are not exactly the same. It can work out, but the layout comes out a little different, so it's hard to work with.
This is a common situation with the alternate suites of Office products, such as a Word, spreadsheet, PowerPoint type applications. The biggest problem is the fonts. And but a lot of Linux systems, as an example, can pull in a lot of different fonts. And it may be a case where your Only Office doesn't recognize the Windows faults on your Windows system. And it's got to get, shall we say, educated to use the Microsoft's TrueType fonts and Clear type fonts. Those are what's causing the problem. And there's a couple, there's many ways of getting those in a Linux operating system, but there are two that are big killers that were big MS fonts. One was Calibre, and I forget what the other one was offhand. It started with a C also. And if you want to have those supported, you had to go to an alternate site to get those and pull them in. But exactly how you do it, I don't know. I've only recently started trying to explore Only Office. I have not done much with it at the moment. LibreOffice is what I use on Windows and on Linux. And usually I don't have enough cross-pollination between real Microsoft Office documents and working them in LibreOffice. But you do notice a format change, and it's due to the fonts.
Tom, did that answer your question?
No, not exactly. I know what you're saying, and basically I had it, the documentation was, or the document was put together in Word, and the reason I brought Only Office in was I was having trouble trying to read PDF files, and it was a docx file that I had the document built in, and when I tried to open up the docx file, it was the Only Office that tried to grab it and open it, and everything was shifted around differently because it wasn't recognizing the spacing and the tab marks and anything as before.
That's because you didn't recognize preferences by file type, like docx. You have settings in apps under settings, and there are defaults for everything you want to launch when you have a particular ending. And in your case, you have a docx because you had Windows in there first, and Only Office came along and usurped some of those settings, so that now it's taken over the purpose of docx launching Only Office, but you can change that setting back in apps.
What should I
Tom?
put in?
Go ahead. I'll let
What
you
should I
finish.
put
Tom.
in in the apps for DocX? What labels should be out there?
For Word, you want Word, I assume.
Yes, I want Word.
Well,
yes.
then you got it'll say right now under Word that DocX brings up only Office. You change it back to Word or whatever other program you want to have it launch.
Right.
Okay, I'll find it.
Okay.
Tom,
Anything else anyone wants to ask?
I want to
Yes,
touch
Pete?
bases with Tom. The
Yeah.
other thing you can do is you can right-click the file and open with in the drop-down.
Yeah, but that's only a
That will
short.
direct it that one time
Yeah, it's
to
a
wherever you want to go.
it's a
And you
short
could
term
force it to open with Word, Microsoft Word.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's a not a permanent fix. Whereas it sounds like he wants more of a permanent fix for that.
Well, the thing is, you can try it out that way to
Yeah.
see if that'll actually correct the problem before he
That's
tries
true.
a whole lot of other stuff.
That's true too.
Okay,
that-
thank you both.
Okay. We wish to conclude tonight's meeting, so I'm going to end the recording.
Recording stop.